G'day everyone, welcome to Fiery Fridays. I'm Sam and we have a special guest today. There he is, Jake Cassar, and we're in Jake's stomping ground today, down on the Central Coast or up on the Central Coast, depending on where you live. And yeah, I was heading through this way and I thought I'd get in touch with Jake because out of anyone, I guess, in this area, Jake's probably got the most local knowledge about the flora, fauna, and particularly this site that we're on now. We've just been talking together about Jake's big journey in terms of protecting this part of the country from development. So yeah, really excited to have him on. Now, Jake, do you want to introduce yourself? What's your story? Jake runs Jake Cassar Bushcraft.
Yep.
And I was interested too, you know, you've got heaps of knowledge, but interested particularly, what's your story? How did you get into doing what you do?
Okay. Well, I might just start off by acknowledging country,
Yep.
if you don't mind. So
Yep.
I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on today, and our elders past and present, and not just to go through the motions, because I have a great deal of respect for anyone who cares for country. And I'd like to extend that out to everyone who fought for many years and worked together to protect this area. The campaign to protect this area goes back 80 years, of course, taking into account over 240 odd years ago the original people that fought for this land as well. So I guess my journey with the bushcraft is that the question?
Yeah. How did you get into doing what you do? You know, because it's not the normal run of the mill. You're not stacking shelves at Woolies at night, or you're not selling widgets on the street corner. Like, we're into similar stuff. We have similar passions, but I'm interested in your story. What led you to get into the stuff that you do today?
I think as soon as my feet got put on the earth in this country, I was into it. Mum reckons when I was 2 or 3 years old, she'd chuck me on the ground and I'd go crawling around, pick up a stick and start digging, getting grubs, even making little fires from a really young age.
Yep.
Then when I was about 4, I met an Aboriginal family from the Ngunnawal people, not far from where we're standing here today. And just started learning a lot about Aboriginal culture. A little bit about plants and animals, but more just about having respect for the land. And before that, I was already hooked. I remember being on a train with my mum, being a real little kid, going through the Hawkesbury River just not far from here on the train, and seeing all the beautiful mountains and the caves, and said to my mum, I said, "Mum, are they caves up there?" She goes, "Yeah, they are." And I really thought about my next question. Would Aboriginal people have lived in those caves, Mum? She's like, "They would have for sure." Really thought about my next question. Can we go to those caves one day?
Yeah.
Hoping that the answer was going to be yes, and it was yes. And while Mum wasn't a bushie, she reluctantly but excitingly as well, because she saw that I was really enthusiastic about it, started taking me on little bushwalks, and my father did the same thing. And by the time I was 7 or 8, they let me go on little walks by myself just at the end of the street into the local bushes up around here. By the time I was 9 or 10, I'd made some friends that were a few years older than me in the Army Reserves and Naval Cadets, Air Force Cadets actually, and they'd go camping a lot, so I'd go camping with them. By the time I was about 12 or 13, I was going camping for 2 or 3 nights by myself, and it just kept going until I was spending weeks at a time by myself up in the bush in my mid-teens.
Yeah.
Still do.
Yeah, awesome. Sometimes I think that stuff's written in the sand before we even get here too, you know. It's in our bones before we even arrive on planet Earth. Hey guys, everyone that's watching, Alyssa, Mark, oh hey Towns, so we're just hearing a bit about Jake's story. So that's a little bit about how you got into it, I guess the short version. And it's obvious if you go for a walk with Jake on this land here, his connection to country is quite strong, and it's something that we talk about a lot in our programs, you know, knowledge of place and how it sort of fosters a sense of belonging and connection. Something that a lot of us modern folk are like seeking again. How do we get connected to land? How do we feel connected to the environment? And I think knowledge of country, like knowing the plants in a place, is a big rope of connection into feeling like you belong there and connected to it. This is a particular special part of the land here, and just before we jumped on here, Jake was telling me about a 10-year journey that he took to protect this part of the land. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? I know it's a long story,
Sure is.
but just in terms of what was potentially going to happen here, what's the significance of this land here, and how did you guys save it?
Sure. So I was coming for a walk with some of the local boys from the Juvenile Justice Centre up the road. I do a bit of youth work, quite a lot. And one of the boys said, "Oh, Jake, what are all those tags on the trees?" One of the Aboriginal boys said that. I said, "I don't know, mate, but I'll find out." And that was the next 10 years of my life. I ended up spending 2 years in the Land and Environment Court. They wanted to do the biggest development within any national park in New South Wales in this area. They're going to essentially bulldoze the centre of our national park, which is full of Aboriginal sites, threatened flora and fauna species, some of which include the powerful owl, which gets up to 65 centimetres tall, Minox strenua. It's only the second largest owl in Australasia. There's one that gets a little bit bigger. The giant burrowing frog, the red-crowned toadlet, potoroos in this area, the eastern chestnut mouse, which is rarely seen. So lots and lots of threatened species, the endangered hanging swamps in this area that are called hanging swamps because they're up high in the landscape. So if something's endangered, it's a pretty big deal. It's considered to be becoming extinct. So speaking of connection to land, have spent my whole life getting in connection with this land, and like Sam was saying, getting to know the names of the plants and animals. It's like you meet a person and you get to know their name, you see what you've got in common, you learn about their likes, their dislikes, and once you start to get to know them over time, you care for them. You may even love them in your own way and be super close, and then if there was a threat to that person, if they were sick, you'd want them to get better. If they were in trouble, you'd want to support them. And that's how I felt about this when I found out that they were going to basically bulldoze this area for a giant housing development. So we ended up having the first blockade that the Central Coast has ever seen. We camped for 98 days on Woy Woy Road, which is a really busy road up the top here, which was fascinating. It was a mixture of the Aboriginal community and the rest of the community camped there. And we got a lot of support. The support was about 500 to 1, but it was surprising. We had rocks thrown at us, bricks thrown at us, eggs thrown at us, which was all right if they didn't break. We'd cook them for breakfast. So, throw some orange juice next time as well, please.
Yep.
It was quite an experience. We're stopping probably $500 million worth of development in this area. This is going to be another suburb. So they sent in some heavies to try and heavy us off the land and all that kind of thing. And that didn't end too well for anyone at the time. But basically, I think we counted about 46 events we had over 10 years. So about 20 protests or peaceful community actions, we prefer to call them. We had many concerts, fundraising concerts to keep us in the game, awareness raising concerts. I'd run tours up in this area and take donations to buy motion detecting cameras to show that there's plenty of endangered species in this area, including koalas in the greater area here. So it basically became my life, and someone suggested that I should run in an election as an independent and try and leverage the government, so to speak, into purchasing this land. And I said I wouldn't have a clue how to do that. I was living in a tent at an activist camp at the time, and but I said I'll do whatever it takes. This is going to take a long time anyway. I can just feel it, and experience would suggest it'd take a long time. And kind of very long and very colourful story short. 4 elections later, over about 6.5 years, we ended up getting. And I say we because everybody in the community got behind me. They knew that I wasn't going to get elected. It was never going to happen. People were going to vote Labor, Liberal, Greens. But once I started getting 4, 5, 6% of the vote, that was giving us leverage to basically say to the government, buy it, or else I'll put all my energy behind Labor or whatever, like play political ball, which was quite controversial at the time. But I said to the 3 major parties, I said, with respect, I hate you all equally, but if you buy this land, give the landowners a fair price, who are also developers. Give the landowners a fair price before the election. We don't want any promises after election. Buy it all, then I'll pull back and I'll let you guys all fight it out, and I won't be the thorn in your side anymore. We got what we want. You guys can fight it out for who's going to win the state election. And Rob Stokes, the Minister for the Environment at the time, is now the Minister for Planning, put out his hand and shook my hand and said, Jake, you've got yourself a deal, and wrote a cheque for $10 or $15 million, and we bought a new national park.
There you go, everyone. That's amazing. Like, and I know, like, we're just skipping over that, but to really grasp the enormity of that, like, I have deep respect for not only Jake but everyone that got behind that, because it is a big sacrifice. You put your body on the line, and you put everything on the line, and you give up, your life to protect a part of the country. So, and it's really embodying that Earth Warrior sort of archetype where you stand there, and say this far but no further, and it paid off. And now we're standing on the legacy of that campaign, which is now a national park and protected for now, and hopefully forever. But quite amazing. That's all heavy stuff. What about some light-hearted stuff? Simon, he's a mutual friend of ours. He was asking in the comments, maybe us mentioning some weird and bizarre stuff we've needed to live off. Maybe some sort of bush food, or when we were really desperate in the bush, or maybe some unfortunate accident you've had with bush food or something like that. Because Jake's quite a bit of a authority on bush food and bush tucker. Have you had any sort of unusual experiences with bush food where you've had to eat something that was quite marginal, or you had like a bit of a reaction to anything?
Well, I certainly have had some reactions.
Yeah.
So I was eating a lot of the pig face fruit, the Carpobroda salatus, I think is the species. It is very nice. And then when I got about 25 or 30 fruit into it, I remembered that an Aboriginal friend told me 15 years earlier that if you have a lot of it, it can cause constant vomiting.
Too much salt.
Too much of it, yeah. It might be that, but they'd use it as a purgative at times at both ends. And I thought, I wonder if that's going to happen to me. I don't know if it was psychosomatic, but it started to come up.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around thinking, what's antispasmodic, what's stomachic, what's going to calm my stomach? And there was just a patch of the Biden's pilosa, the farmer's friend.
Yeah.
And got about 2 or 3 handfuls of that. I kind of went through my brain, all the different uses for it: antiseptic, antifungal, antibacterial. And then, stomachic, antispasmodic, that's going to settle my stomach down.
Yeah.
So I'm getting excited.
Get excited, mate.
And so a couple of handfuls of it, and within a minute or so, my stomach was completely settled, and I got to hold on not only to the nutrition that I'd worked so hard for, but also for the water that I'd been blowing out of roots from the old man Banksia and the five-fingered water vine.
Yeah.
So it was a quick look around and see what I could do.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go, knowledge of place, Farmer's Friend. Everyone's probably seen Farmer's Friend, but maybe you don't know what it is. It's a little, gets caught in your sock. It's the little seed on it. It's quite a bit of a nuisance, but the medicine wasn't too far away. It's interesting, bush food. I know we've had lots of experiences where we've done survival trips and got really hungry and had, like great experiences on bush food and then overdone it, like Jake was talking about. Like the bush food, I think people don't realise, is so nutrient dense compared to our conventional modern food, and that you can overdo it and you don't need as much. And some things still, even though they're edible, they still have a minor level of toxin as a protective element to the plant, and so you have to treat it with respect and just have a little bit. So yeah, I know I've got a similar story where I was just telling Jake before we jumped on. I ate a purple fruit one day, and we were 3 days into a survival trip and a long way from help, and I ate this fruit thinking it was something else, and it caused instant vomiting and sweating, and my body did what it needed to get rid of it, but it could have been touch and go in terms of where we're at. So maybe, Jake, what's the caution around bush food too? Because a little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing with bush food. What's your take?
Whenever I'm running courses, I like to start off with safety first and just say, I officially say to anyone, don't go trying anything. Yeah. Unless you absolutely have to. Do your best to identify things, and people are going to go trying things. Yeah. But do your absolute best to identify them. Get a good ID book. Jump on as many different courses as you can. Take everything everyone says with a grain of salt, and everything you read in books with a grain of salt as well. If you insist on eating stuff, just eat a small amount, and especially with the introduced species, it's really important to note that it may have been sprayed with poison before you got there. Okay, so that's a factor. Or you could find out that you're the first person that finds out they're allergic, severely allergic to something as well. A fungi, for example, like the shaggy ink cap, you'll read in a lot of books that is perfectly edible. But if you have a couple of wines later that night or a beer, it can send you to hospital.
Yeah, right, the reaction.
So there's all kinds of things that'll interact. And then there's a lot of information in books with great respect to them. And I won't mention authors because I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for some of these authors. But things like Dianella caerulea, I found out recently, has got the little blue flax lily, I think they call it, has got 3 or 4 chemical constituents in it that can be toxic to humans in large amounts. Things like wild tobacco, Solanum mauritianum, can cause throat closure and anaphylactic shock. So that's why I think it's really important for us as teachers to make sure we're doing our homework and always saying to people, please be super careful. We're doing all kinds of research. There's new information coming through all the time, and people have got to continue to do their own research. And if they insist on eating things, just in really, really small amounts.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon's saying here, and anyone else, if you guys want to leave any questions for Jake particularly, bush food questions or any questions, he's knowledgeable in a lot of areas, Throw it in the comments. Simon saying that we should tell Jake that they had their baby. Simon and Janet had a baby. And
congratulations, guys. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be an amazing little human.
Yeah, totally.
Can't wait to meet him or her.
Yeah, good stock.
Bloody oath.
Yeah, so bush food. So what about, like in this area here, we're sort of in sandstony, what I call sandstone escarpment country. What are some of the key, we ate a few things in on the way in here. What are some of the things that are on offer at the moment that are quite good, and maybe talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Well, straight away you want to be aiming for your A deck, your fat soluble vitamins, so your vitamin A, D, E and K. So I'd be heading closer to the road to look for some of the wild plant species that are around. I try not to call them weeds nowadays, wild herbs.
Yep.
Just edible.
They're naturalised.
Wild greens.
Yep.
That's right. They're extremely useful. Again, being careful that they haven't been sprayed, and they don't generally spray in this area. This time of year we've got the sour currants, which is going to give us our vitamin C. So we've got our A deck, which is going to stay in our fat for up to 35 to 40 days. They're our fat soluble vitamins. And then we've got to get our vitamin C and our B group of vitamins into us. So vitamin C we're going to get from the sour currant bush, or Leptomeria acida. Very, very sour. The kids around here call them sour warheads. We can also get quite a lot of vitamin C, actually a hell of a lot of vitamin C, from the Dioscorea transversa, which is around all year round. It's pencil yam or long yam it gets called. Wyong in the local Aboriginal language, like the place. Up to 728 milligrams per 100 gram sample of vitamin C, and it's around all year round. So we're not waiting for lily pillies to come out or sour currants to come out. This time of year we've also got some vitamin C and some of the B group of vitamins in the Wadabutta in the Sydney Aboriginal language, native sarsaparilla, Smilex glossophylla. We're getting our sugar to activate our DNA and to get us going, and also quite a decent level of vitamin C, about the same as tomatoes. Some of the B group of vitamins in there as well, and a bit of a adaptogenic, a testosterone booster for men that need it, and an estrogen booster for women that need it, to make sure we're on our game while we're out in the bush.
Woohoo! That's amazing. There was a question there too, and maybe what if someone's just getting into bush food, what's a good book they could start on? Like, what's a good starter book that anyone that's a novice could start with? You got any tips on that? Yeah,
sure. So anything by Pat Collins, particularly Edible Weeds at Our Doorstep. That was the second last book. Wondrous World of Weeds, I think, is the new one that she's done.
She's up in Hunter Valley, isn't she?
Hunter Valley, courses are really affordable. She's just legit. She's a healer. Met her a couple of times around the traps. Tim Lowe's Wild Food Plants of Australia. And again, with incredible respect to these guys, please just take everything with a grain of salt and do your own research as well, because there's new research coming through all the time about edible and medicinal plants. Of course, Diego Bonetto, who's in Sydney, that does a lot of wild weed walks. He's got quite good knowledge on native plants as well. Very humble, awesome guy. He isn't afraid. If he's not sure about something, he'll get out his phone and look it up, although he's been around forever doing this kind of thing. Any course that you can jump on, I think, because even if people have largely got textbook knowledge and haven't even been out in the field that much, they've often got something to offer that someone else doesn't. So whenever I run a course, I always recommend these guys, and recommend Australian survival instructors, and recommend all the different groups that are doing different things, because you want to learn from as many different places as you can. There's some great sites on Facebook as well. Got to be careful with some people just throwing things out there saying all grevillea nectar is edible when it's not. Sometimes you got to watch out for big sweeping statements. But so the two main ones, I'm not very succinct, am I?
No, you're very succinct, Jake. Keep going, mate. Simon's getting hot under the collar. He's so excited.
The two main ones, Tim Lowe's Wild Food Plants of Australia. Make sure you get your plant ID right in the Greater Sydney area. So get Les Robinson's book, Robbo's, we call it. Anything by Alan Fairley for identification. Anything by Pat Collins. And while you're there, get yourself Magic and Medicine of Plants by Reader's Digest. It's a beautiful old book.
Wow. There you go. That was an interesting one you mentioned about Dianellas, because I thought all Dianellas were edible.
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah, and this is the point about books. And I would just eat them indiscriminately. But Jake, and recently we found out too that not all of them are edible. That was pointed out to me just recently.
The Dianella tasmanica is one example of one that's really, really toxic. And I got on a Facebook page a couple of years ago, and they were saying that all the species are edible, which is what us as teachers have been taught. And I said, actually, the Dianella tasmanica is not. It's not only bitter, but it's quite toxic. And things that are extremely bitter, imagine that going down into your gut on a survival mission. So it might not be considered toxic, but if it's going to make you sick, and if you're out there in a serious survival situation, you don't want to be consuming those kind of things. And everyone's jumped on and said, no, all species. I said, yeah, I read that in Tim Lowe's book as well, but I'm talking about actual experience from people. So there's a lot of different things, like even your devil's twine. You can eat the fruit, you can't eat the fruit, but they take on the chemical constituents of the plants that they're living off, which can be a fantastic thing if they're living off one of the Persunia species, one of the G-bung species, for example. They take on some of the antibiotic qualities of some of the G-bung species, so you've got an antibiotic there. If they're living on a Leptospermum trinervium, for example, the flaky bark tea tree, they take on some of that tea tree, which you can use as a throat lozenge. But other tea trees are toxic and we can't have them orally. So there's just so much different information out there that we need to just build this up as teachers. When I started teaching however long ago, I put on my metaphorical white belt, had an open mind, try my best to be humble, and just open my mind to whatever new information is coming through all the time.
Totally. And there's only so much you can get from books, and then you've got to put yourself out there and actually, go and taste things, or go with someone that really knows and have you and be guided to actually try things, because your body too might react differently to different plants too. Jake, is that the case for mistletoe berries as well? Yeah,
there is some mistletoe species. I know at least one that's toxic. They get called snotty gobbles out in the desert when I'm working out with the Warramungu people and the Quinny and the Broken Hill, the Barkindji people. They call them snotty gobbles. But there's apparently a few species of mistletoe fruit that are toxic, so just be mindful of that. I mean, just look at the G-bungs, for example. Everyone knows the G-bungs. They also get called snotty gobbles sometimes as well. There's around 100 species of those, a lot of people don't realise. And, myself personally, I've tried about 15 or so species. I have not tried all the species. 65 species of lily-pilly. 40 species of brachychiton or currajong, meaning good for string in an Aboriginal language, they'll call that a whole heap of different species. It's about someone, hopefully one of the teachers, really learning a broad amount of plants and doing the homework and always chucking on the end, but I wouldn't go just trying it, or, it's like I just found out recently, there's a couple of amaranth species. What a beautiful plant, beautiful, useful plant, especially for our vegan and vegetarian friends, high in protein and high in fat.
Yeah,
for a green leafy vegetable, high in fat.
Super critical in the bush, fat. That you're looking for fat all the time.
And again, for our vegan and vegetarian friends, but there's a couple of species that are toxic, I just found out recently, and I didn't know that, and I've known about amaranth forever. Not trying to scare people, just trying to inspire them and make sure they're really doing the homework.
Hey Jane, you live down this way. I think you're at Copa, aren't you?
Jane.
Yeah, love to see Jake and Sam together. Love your work. Yeah, we love your work too, Jane. What was I going to say? Oh, that was interesting too. We started because, bush food, when we teach bush food in our programs, we also teach about, animal protein too, because that's a big part of any survivalist diet in terms of nutrition and calorie intake, and definitely, like you're talking about desert mobs before, or close to desert, like at some times of the year that 90% of their intake was animal fat, like animal protein and fat. And but it was interesting, getting Jake's take on that as well, because we spoke a little bit around hunting, and he declared himself, can I say, a closet vegan, so, he likes to not just, when we're talking about hunting, we're not just throwing it out there and going, oh yeah, you could eat this and you can eat that too, because it takes a certain level of skill, dedication and time put into really studying that animal and getting good at hunting to do a good job on it.
Well, if they're going out and maiming animals because they don't know how to, or you can make a trap properly and it catches a bloody koala. It catches a threatened northern brown bandicoot, for example, or traps, for example, don't discriminate. So that's just one factor. But for me personally, people have got to get to a certain level of proficiency before I start teaching them specific tracking for hunting animals or trapping for hunting animals. And I'd really like to make that the culture, because I think the vast majority of people that we're working with aren't going to go out willy-nilly just randomly trying to kill things, hopefully. But it's just really about, if you're going to do it, make sure that you are proficient at it, that you've got as much respect as you can, that you know about it. For example, when I've been out with my Aboriginal mates and we take a bush turkey, I had some young Koori mates about to just spear a bush turkey, and I said, wait a sec, hold up for a sec. And one of the elders was with us, said, oh, listen to Jake, which was nice. And I said, let's work out which ones are the males and which ones are the females. The males have got the thicker, looser wattle around the neck. And if there's a surplus,
Yeah, sorry, keep going. Simon's just being ridiculous. Lies? What kind of lies? Settle down, Simon. Anyway, sorry.
If there's more of the males or more of the females, then we'll take whichever one there's more of. So it's about sustainability as well. Of course, wherever possible, go for introduced species, go for the rabbit,
absolutely,
go for the deer.
Yeah.
I did a survival mission with what's his name? The guy that teaches survival up north of Brisbane, Rich Hungerford.
Yeah.
Champion bloke.
Yeah.
And I was eating the cane toad legs. So I kill them with respect and my little sorry and thank you song.
Yeah.
And make sure I keep my hands clean. Kill them quickly. Take off the legs, skin them, wash them, boil them, and eat them. And everyone's like, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "Well, I've done this before. I've eaten lots of cane toads legs, but you've just got to be super careful and also just that respect thing and know what you're doing."
Totally, yeah. And we call that the caretaker principle. Anyone that's come to our programs in terms of looking after country, and you do that with the animals, like Jake's talking about with the brush turkeys, or if you're hunting even a roo and you're looking for a young male rather than a breeding male, and definitely not females. So you put all those, you look through that lens whenever you're assessing what sort of animal and the gender and the age that you're going to take, and definitely assessing your own need too to harvest, whether it's plants or animals as well. How great is my need at this point to actually take the life of that animal,
exactly right,
to sustain mine? If it's not great, then you leave it alone. We
were just saying earlier that there's around 120 different species of yabbies or crayfish or freshwater crayfish. And around half of those are not only threatened or uncommon, they're actually endangered, which is nearly extinct. If they're classed as endangered, they're nearly extinct. But you'll be out camping with some mates, they'll come back with a big yabby, oh beauty, chuck it in the pot or take it home, and they could have just caused the extinction of that particular animal in that area. So good conversation to be having. I think Simon was saying lies because we ate a whole heap of cicadas on New Year's Eve survival mission. So cook your insects well, guys. They can give you parasites apparently.
There you go. That's a good one. I didn't know that. I've eaten some insects raw. We just recently ate a bunch of grasshoppers on a survival trip, and some of them were raw. So
especially those, mate. They can give you intestinal parasites.
Okay, there you go. See, we're always learning. Hey, what I wanted to do, Jake, if you want to jump around, can you? We just want to get this tree in that's in the background here. It's or maybe Jake, you talk about it. This is your country here.
Well, this is Angophora costata, or Sydney red gum. And she's an absolute beauty. This is one we call the grandmother tree. And a bit of a thing when I come up here, there's a tradition I learned as a young fella. An elder told me that naughty kids, if they needed to stop being naughty, was her words, they'd give this tree a hug and make a wish to get their act together. That's not exactly how she put it, but I think she was giving me a hint at the time. And since then, I've probably had literally about 5,000 or 6,000 people from all around the world come and hug the grandmother tree there. Same lady, old Nana Coogan, we used to call her, told us a story about the Egyptian hieroglyphs that are just around the corner that some of you people would have heard about as well. So this is, I don't know, probably 1,000-year-old tree. She's absolutely phenomenal and just beautiful. One of the thickest, broadest gum trees you'll see around here.
Yeah. It's literally, and unfortunately the phone's not doing it justice there. It is, it's an amazing specimen. It's the thickest barrel I've seen on an Angophora ever. So anyway, Jake, I don't know how far, we usually just go for 30 minutes, but it's amazing. I want to thank Jake for being here today and sharing just like the tip of the iceberg in terms of his knowledge of country down here. But where can people find out about what you do, Jake? Like your website, or programs might be starting again. We've both been affected by this lockdown stuff, but where do people find out about what you do and what do you got coming up?
Cool. Well, I'd also like to say thank you to you too. We really got to stick together. It's more important than ever that we reactivate what's already within everybody. We all talk a lot about nature connection, but I find it more about reactivating what's already within us. All of our ancestors are indigenous to this planet. All the women going back 200,000 years were consummate botanists and trackers and hunters, as were the men. And we need to really reclaim our connection, and survival of the most cooperative, the people that are out there teaching and introducing people back into the land need to really work together. So thank you, bro. So I've got a few pages. I've got Jake Cassar Bushcraft on Instagram and on Facebook. And I've got Jake Cassar Official because Facebook won't let me have a regular Facebook profile. You get that when you stop about $4 or $5 billion worth of development over the years. I'm not even against development. I'm very much pro good sustainable development. And if you jump on my website, jakecassarbushcraft.com, you can subscribe. I don't send out many emails, but I talk about courses. I've got one coming up tomorrow week, and there might be a couple of spots left on that one. But start off with jump on Jake Cassar Official on Facebook. That'll get you started.
Yep. Jake's got heaps of good stuff going on. And what we spoke about too, this is something for the future. Jake lives a little ways from here in the bush. Yeah. It's got a pretty cool setup with a shelter and I don't know, I haven't been there, but what we were thinking was, I don't know if we can get reception to do a live, but maybe next time I'm coming through this way I could go and visit Jake and we could do another segment of this just recorded and then maybe throw it up on our Facebook site so people can see a bit more of Jake and what he's up to. What have we got coming up? We've got coming up a Soul Quest online challenge. So if you want to get activated like Jake's talking about and really like get clear on what you're here to do at the moment, Jake's obviously someone that's steeped in his own passions and purpose and on point around what he's offering to the world. If you want to get activated in that way and really sort of dive deep through discovering sort of earth wisdom and dancing with the mystery through the bush and find out what you're here to do and break through any sort of obstacles that are in your way, that's a 3-week online program you could jump on and go on the journey with a bunch of other amazing humans. That starts on the 25th of May. Doors close in terms of bookings on the 23rd. We've got an early bird at the moment that's happening until maybe Monday the 18th. So check that out. You'll see a link for that somewhere on this post here. But thanks for joining us, guys. We've got some beautiful rain here on the Central Coast. Obviously, really exciting stuff with Jake and so much more to talk about.
I've got to show you the hieroglyphs.
Oh, yeah.
They're only around the corner. They're just there. So we'll
should we go? Should we go? Well, should we take?
Should we take? Want to come?
You guys can tune out if you want to now, because we're going to keep the live going just for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Hieroglyphs.
Just around the corner. Yeah.
We're going to go up the hieroglyphs and just have a quick look. So it might get a bit bumpy as we head up the road, but we'll get up there and have a look. It's super beautiful.
Hand back on the tree. Down there so people can see the size of it.
Hang on. So if you have a look up there, you can have a look at Jake and just check out that tree. Like the barrel on that tree, it's just amazing. A true grandmother. So on the way in, we were eating some sour currants that were off the hook, beautiful, plump, full of vitamin C, like Jake was saying. And so really, when you do get to get a really intimate knowledge of place, the bush does become, like it's sort of, you don't need to go to Woolworths, it's your food, but it's also your medicine too. The two would go together, which is something that we've lost today in our sort of food systems, that food might be food, but it's not always medicine as well. But often in the bush, you're getting both of those things at the same time.
Anything that's good for your immune system at the moment is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
The sour currants are really good.
Yeah. So we're just heading up the escarpment now. We'll just follow Jake up.
There's a big story about the glyphs, whether they're real or fake. But if you look up Raymond Johnson, he was an amateur Egyptologist, but quite a celebrated one. He wrote 4 whole dictionaries on ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And my dad's actually from Egypt, ironically. And actually I should say something in Egyptian before we get up here. Ana asif ana marafsh kalim Arabi kwa yisawi. It means I'm afraid I don't speak Arabic very well. Let's see how we go. So I wrote 4 whole dictionaries on ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. And he said in no uncertain terms, and I'm not saying that these are legitimate Egyptian hieroglyphs made around 5,000 years ago. So I'm open to it, like I'm open to a lot of different information getting out there. But let's go and check them out.
Yeah. All right.